Okay, so should we make a start? Great. So very warm welcome to everybody, and I'm really delighted to have Dr. Jean-Claude Gumberto here with us today, who's speaking to us from just outside Bordeaux. Some of you may know Dr. Gumberto's wonderful videos he's done. The first one was Strolling Under the Skin, and he's done several since then. He is a very celebrated hand surgeon and a member of the French Academy of Surgery and past president of the French Society for Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery. And he's done this wonderful book, which I have here, The Architecture of Human Living Fascia. And he's going to be talking about that tonight for us. So thank you, and over to you, Dr. Gumberto, and welcome. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, John. Thank you for your invitation. And well, hello to all the participants this evening. First of all, I want to thank my partner in this book, Colin Armstrong, for his efficient participation, giving me advice as a therapist and help me for translation. I want also thank Marilo and Andrew Stevenson, my editors, for their support, and Paula Morling to have refined the text in US English. I wrote this book to summarize all I have seen during 20 years and to explain the concept of the living matter. And first of all, I wanted to understand how sliding system between tendons were working. And then little by little, I was introduced in a new world, the world of fibrillar network. And it's a sort of a new way of knowing living matter, because in fact this connective tissue, which has been neglected by anatomists and by surgeons, as me, because it's a very fragile tissue, is in fact the most interesting organization and can be compared to the cells. The extracellular world has so importance as the cells. So when I did my first dissection to try to understand the sliding system, I was confronted to two things. First, it is beautiful. And I wanted to share this beauty of the living matter. It's beautiful. You have colors. You have red, yellow, blue, sometimes green. It's beautiful. And the second one is that this network is in a completely dispersed pattern. It's not a regular organization. There is no parallels. There is nothing which can be introduced as a Euclidean mathematics. So to understand, I use first endoscope. And this endoscopes was used putting the endoscope inside the tissue and without blood supply, bleeding, because we used a tourniquet. As you can see here, when you have no tourniquet, you have bleeding everywhere, and of course, you can see nothing. So we used tourniquet during procedures, very long procedures, as microsurgery. During 8 hours, I was using endoscope for 15 or 20 minutes. And my first observation was the tissue continuity. The tissue continuity is really the first observation. We can see, for example, the next slide, which is a video. John, can you drive the first video, please? This one. John? Thank you. For example, here you can see the muscle, the skin, the fat, yellow, and you can see all these fibers linking all the fat, the skin, the muscle, aponeurosis. All these fibers are in a completely dispersed pattern. Look, you can't find any irregular organization. It's a chaotic tissue. And this character, this chaotic organization is disappointing because you are looking for something very organized, because the result is the sliding. And in fact, you have to accept that the sliding, I mean the perfect way of doing, is realized by a non-regular disposition. It's a chaotic, dispersed pattern. So for me, it has been very difficult to accept that you have efficiency thanks to chaos. And to understand in a better way, I decided to begin my exploration of skin. Skin, first you see polyhedrons on the surface of the skin. Why polyhedrons? You see many kinds of skin on the same patient. You can have parallels, you can have circular, you can have fractalized skin as here. So you have many skins, and you have also links between the depths and the dermis here. These links are completely shaping the skin and determine the design of the polyhedrons. So there is a link with the depths. And this link with the depths, you can also observe it here when you have the skin here and the fat. There is no layers, there is no plan, there is no separate or free planes. It's everything in continuity. There is no layers between skin, dermis, and fat. And then these fibers, you can find them just below the aponeurosis here, penetrating inside the muscle. Here you can see the aponeurosis with this kind of weaving, which is completely irregular, but terribly efficient. And then our exploration continues around the tendon here, around the muscles, and all these fibers penetrate inside the fascicles of the muscles, and they shape the fascicles. They penetrate inside, and as for fatty lobules, they are responsible of the shape of the muscle. Can we have the next video, please? And you can see that all this tissue here, which seem to be nothing, in fact, you are going to see that this tissue is made of fibers. Look here. You move all the sliding tissue around the tendon. You think that it's nothing. You move again to observe all these micro vacuoles here. You have seen all this fibrillar network everywhere. And you can find this fibrillar network around the nerve, around the periosteum, around the bone. So you find it everywhere and in all the parts of the body, around the tendon, in the thorax, under the breast, at the level of the scalp. Everywhere you have this kind of fibrillar network. So this fibrillar network assumes the continuity of all the tissues. The link is complete thanks to this fibrillar network. There is no gap, there is no free plane, not at all. Our body is a unified whole. So, our book was divided in 7 chapters and one last called afterwards. So in the first chapter, we have defined the tissue continuity. And we have many questions, which we call red thread question, to explain first the continuity of the tissue, then to explain how this continuity is organized, and all these fibers are, as you see here, intertwining, intersecting in the 3 dimension of the space. So they determine a small volume when you have in the 3 dimension of the space 2 or 3 fibers intercrossing, they determine a micro volume. This micro volume is filled of glycoaminoglycan, and the frame, the fibers, is made of collagen or elastin. And they determine a volume. There is not only one shape for the fibers. You can find many kinds. You have some example here. And the diameter is between 10 and 40 microns. But the most important thing is that this organization is able to define volume. And we are volumes. So, first, we have tissue continuity. Second, this tissue continuity explains how we are, I mean volumes. And this fibrillar network also explains mobility, because everything is mobile. And these fibers, John, maybe this video, I hope it's working. Can you put it on, this video? John, you are going to see, yes, you have 3 fibers and 4 barrels. This one is going to move, this one is going to divide, and this one is going to lengthen. So this free movement, if you imagine this free movement on billions of fibers, again, the video, maybe, on fibers, you can imagine what is suppleness. And all this suppleness, you can see sliding here, look, yes, dividing and lengthening. All the fibers are almost able to do that. Can we have the next slide? Thank you. So all these fibers are able to do it. And when you imagine that billions and billions are able to do that, you can have this result. Look, you see, in the 3 dimension of the space, they can move in all the parts of the space. So, and without any rupture. So it's a way, a fantastic way for mobility without any rupture and able to blood supplies. Can we have? Yes, and able to blood supply even during effort. The 4th chapter introduces the cells. The cells are not responsible of the form of a body because in many areas you have few cells, very few, but you have always fibers. So I say that cells are not responsible of the shape of our body, but fibrillar network is responsible of our shape. So sometimes you can find cells completely embedded, as you see here, in the fibers, and you can find cells as cluster of billions of cells, and sometimes you find only 2 cells or a small group of cells, very often along the vessels. So the question is, in front of these two cells, what are they doing here? Are they here from the beginning? I mean, from the beginning of the embryogenesis, or have they migrated? And if they have migrated, in which purpose? So it's a very, very, very important question. And I show you how, in the next video, how the cells are embedded inside the fibrillar network. John, can we have the video, please? Look, you have the cells here, and look, all the fibers here, they embed, all the cells are nest in the fibrillar network. There is no separation. It's the same organization, cells and fibers. And cells are under the mechanical constraints of the fibers. So the extracellular world is so important as the cells. Can we have the next slide, John, please? Thank you.
Dr. Gimberto, there's a question down here from about, if I can say it to you,
Yes.
about the biochemistry of the internal fluid of the microvacuoles. Has it been analyzed?
Yes, it's glycoaminoglycan. Inside of the microvolume determined by the intercrossing of fibers, when it's a sliding system, for example, you have glycoaminoglycan. When it's an organ, like a thyroid, for example, you have cells and fibers. And when you have a sliding system, you have fibers, glycoaminoglycan, and very few cells, very few. But it's always the same network, the same frame, the same organization everywhere. And you have cells to give an organ, to give a gland, for example, and you have glycosaminoglycan to give suppleness, elasticity. But it's the same. So, cells and these fibers, when we observe a living body, we are confronted to the physical properties. I mean that the architecture of life obeys to the fundamental physical force. And these forces have selected initial forms. And during the evolution has been developed using the same structural pattern and diversity. And we are confronted to fundamental forces. The first one is the internal tension. When you cut an aponeurosis, when you cut the skin, when you cut the tendon, the edges are separated. When you observe a tissue after a few minutes, you observe this kind of microvacuoles. If you could cut, for example, can we have the video? You are going to see what is the tension after the section with the scissors. Can we have the video? Look here. You cut. Look, it's like an elastic band. So, this force inside of our body, thank you. Can we have the next, please? The forces Can we have the next slide, please? So the forces inside our body are very strong. We are in pretension, in tissular pretension. And thanks to the micro-volume, microvacuolar concept, we can explain the capacity of adaptability of the tissue, because the volume of the microvacuole is filled with glycosaminoglycan and able to absorb a constraint by deformation. And also, the microvacuolar organization is able to struggle against the gravity. And it's perfectly understandable with the biotensegrity concept. Can we have the video, please? Biotensegrity concept, developed by Stephen Levine, is very interesting because it explains that the gravity force is distributed in all the elements of the living matter. So the importance of the gravity on one element is completely absorbed by the fact that this force is developed in all the elements of the organization of the living matter. So it's less important, and it can explain. Can we have the next? John, please. Yes. And it can explain how our body is able to develop during the growing. This is one fundamental question. How can we fight against gravity. Normally, it's impossible. But all the living species are able to do that. It's because we are organized with a fibrillar network with microvolumes and able to resist to the gravity force. So we have mobility, we have continuity, we have volumes, we have adaptability. So what happens when this perfect harmony tissue is destroyed? When you have a scar, can we have the video, please? Can we have, when you have a scar, can we have the video, John, please? Yes, thank you. When you have a scar, like here, everything, all this fibrillar harmony is destroyed. And it will never rebuild as it was before. You have here, for example, you have here a scarring tissue.
There is a question for you while you're on there from Sheila. She's asking, how important is the fluid surrounding the fibers for their varied and amazing tasks? And is that what we would know as tissue fluid? That's her question.
Well, in fact, when you make an incision on the skin, for example, you can observe fluid. It's what we call lymph, but these fluids are observable because you have destroyed the microvolumes. Otherwise, the fluids, I mean glycoaminoglycan, are inside the microvacuoles. And there is no fluids free in the body. They are in the intersection of the fibers. But there is permeability, so it's not hermetic. Fluids can move along the fibers, inside the microvolumes. It's not hermetic. But there is no free fluids, except when you have edema, for example. You have, in this case, free fluids inside the tissue. But otherwise, no, there is no fluids free around the cells and around the fibers. No. So, what is important to say concerning the scar is the scar tissue is not a specific process. Nature does not repair and reshape living matter exactly as it was before. And the result very often is not very good. The scars are not very functional. Other pathologies, edema and inflammation. So we explain all of that in the book. We explain also, for example, obesity. We explain also aging. Aging is only the revenge of gravity. Around 25 years old, fibers, glycoaminoglycan, are little by little losing their quality, and they can't resist to the gravity, and of course, little by little, things are collapsing. So we explain all this evolution of the living tissue, and it's because it's very different, and I want to insist on this fact. I want to insist that when you observe a cadaver, or when you observe a small piece of an organ, you can't imagine the tension, you can't imagine the hydration, you can't imagine how cells are disposed along all the fibers. So it's a completely different world. And after this anatomical observation, you can also explain some pathologies, like the scarring tissue, obesity, and you can include inside this concept many modifications. For example, in obesity, all the microvacuoles are filled with adipocyte. It's a way to make a reserve for the living body. So you can explain many things. And what is also very important is if this tissue is able to be found everywhere, from the skin to all the organs, in all the parts of the body, we can think that the framing of our body is made of fibers. And this connective tissue, in fact, is not a connective tissue. It is a constitutive tissue. And we can explain how our body, can we have the video, please, John? And we can explain how our body, using this type of architecture, our interior architecture. And you can define here the skin. You can define the fatty organization, aponeurosis, tendon, and muscles and bone, in the same way of framing. It's the same everywhere. It's different sometimes because you have more density, more cells, but it's always the same frame. So there is really an interior architecture. And this interior architecture, which is made by a fibrillar link from the surface of the skin to the inside of the cells, the link is perfect. We could say that this is fascia. I don't say that we have to adopt, but when we say fascia, very often people think that it's a sort of link between different areas. And so this fibrillar network is really the link between all the parts of the body and is responsible of the building of all these parts. So it's a completely paradigm shift. Connective tissue is in fact the constitutive tissue. And we could say that fascia is a tensional, continuous fibrillar network extending from the surface of the skin to the nucleus of the cell. This global network is mobile, adaptable, fractal, irregular, and it's the basic structural architecture of the human body. So it's a way really of thinking the organization of the body. And can we have the video? When you observe, when we observe how, for example, this fiber is moving, we introduce new questions. And these new questions are developed in the chapter, the last chapter of the book, named Afterwards. And in this chapter, I present some questions concerning the uncertainty of the movement of the fibers. It's not determined. And there is an opening of the migration of these fibers to open the field of possibilities. So we are not in the Newtonian physics, but we are in quantum physics. And you can observe that only if you are in a living body. Other question, why nature use only irregular polyhedral forms to build a wide diversity of complex forms? Why? It's always polyhedral. The first question was, are movements predetermined or random? The second is this one. And it's most important to consider that all the living organs are made of the same framework, fibular framework. I saw it in rabbits, mouse, cow, dogs. It's the same. And you can also observe plants. It's not very far. So human is organized are all the living creature of the world. It's the same way of doing. So it's important to also observe that chaos is inside of us. But it's not a chaos without any sense. It's an appearance of chaos, but there is an underlying order. And at the end, I want to say that maybe this extracellular world has a fundamental influence on the cells. Maybe, and I explain that in the book, maybe this multifibular system has the capacity to influence the cellular genomic process. It's difficult to say that because cells until now is the most known world, but the cellular world don't explain everything. The extracellular world can explain something. So we have to realize that extracellular world is able to explain and to bring new solution for many problems without explanation. So during this book, I have tried during 4 years to realize this book, I have tried to present what I have seen, how I can explain, and at the end, conclusion and question. It's a book for everybody interested in living matter. It's a book for medical, paramedical, therapists, technician of labs, engineer, but also for the great public, because everybody is interested to see how beautiful is the inside of a human body. So maybe now you have questions, and I am ready to give some answer if we have time. John?
Yes, Jean-Claude, there are a few questions typed there. I don't know if you want me to read them or you can just look at them. At the bottom, just below where you are, there's some questions from Craig and Christoph and Colin. Can you see those, or do you want me to read them to you?
No, I don't know which one. Do you want to
Oh, okay. Well, I'll read them. I'll read them. So from Sheila, she is asking, she'd like to know how this new understanding fits into our previous knowledge, understanding of the continuity of fluids between blood and lymph capillaries, cells, and intercellular spaces.
Well, there is a total continuity because all the vascular vessels are made of fibers. So there is no difference there is no anatomical difference inside the body between the vessels and the fibers around. The continuity is total. When we show during anatomical teaching vessels, of course we have vessels, but if we can show them, it's because we have dissected them. We have created plane, surgical plane, but these surgical planes don't exist inside the body. We create them. So there is a complete link between the membranes of the vessels and all the sliding tissue, the fibrillar network around. It's a total continuity. So all the fluids can cross the cellular membrane of the vessel and can penetrate inside the extracellular world. And then they can migrate everywhere where it's needed. So it's why I say there is a total tissular continuity. There is no separate plane. And so everything is linked. And all the communication between vascular world, inside vascular world, extracellular world, and cellular world is able. Because the membrane of the cells is in perfect connection with the fibrillar network. When you move the fibrillar network, you move the cells. And the cell change of shape. They are flat, they become round. I have many videos in the book to show that. So it's a new thinking of the human body. And I hope I have an answer to your question.
Yes, thank you. There are quite a few questions here, Jean-Claude, actually. I'm just picking a couple of them. Well, there's two questions. One from Carol. Have your findings about fascia changed the way you work as a surgeon? And the other question is, how do you feel that gentle hands-on techniques, bodywork techniques, can influence what you're talking about?
As a surgeon, I try to explain now that even we have to do the job to repair a bone, to repair a tendon, we have to be very precautious concerning all this fibrillar network. Because we have seen that if we destroy it, it will never be rebuilt as it was before. We will have a scarring tissue. So, when we don't need to destroy, we have to don't destroy. So, surgery with, if possible, mini incision, no overall destruction of the tissue, so very precautious. Concerning the body massage, well, I have not a very important experience. What I can say for surgery, for example, it's that it's very useful. And I can't imagine any hand surgery rehabilitation without massage. And we have to move the skin to restore the mobility, to give to the fibers more suppleness, to restore the fluids. We know that we will not have as it was before, but we can improve a lot. So surgery without any physiotherapy or massage, I think, is will give to the patient a much more or less result.
Wonderful, thank you. So there are some more questions if you're happy with it. So Sheila is asking about the spaces between the fibrils. Is it just space, like in molecules? I know from your videos that the beautiful spaces you can see. So she's asking what is in these spaces.
As I said, when you have an intercrossing of lines in 3 dimensions of space, you have a volume. That's a very, how can I say, Euclidean observation. So you have a volume. The fibers are made of collagen or elastin, collagen 1 or 3. But depending on the area where you take it, and in this volume determined by the intercrossing of the fibers, you have fluids. And these fluids have been analyzed in some areas, for example, at the forearm, for example, at the leg, and it's always almost the same thing. I mean, glycoaminoglycan, some lipids, and well, sometimes some collagen 6 or 4, depending on the area. I am sure that it's not the same everywhere. For example, it's not the same in one muscle, it's not the same at the foot, it's not the same at the thorax, at the back. I am sure it's changing. But now, we are not really in capacity to analyze for each patient. But in the future, it will be the case. And we will see that what we call now glycoaminoglycan will be this one or another different. Like for the molecules, at the beginning it was almost the same. And now, little by little, we know that it's different. So it will be the same, but we are just at the beginning of the exploration. And in the future, with new technology, it will be better, much better. just the beginning.
So there's a question from Christine, who talks about Bruce Lipton's research found, she says...
Sorry. I talk about? What do you
yes,
say?
she says she's talking about Bruce Lipton's research that the external environment of cells has an influence on the cell's function. So if we follow that conclusion, would the health of the fascia around the cells impact the cell's ability to function in its full capacity?
Well, what I can say is that when therapists are doing massage, and we have a movie on that, when therapists are doing massage, they influence the shape of the cells because they move the fibrillar network, what we can call fascia, and the fascia has a mechanical influence on the cells. They move and they change the shape of the cells. So it's a mechanical influence, a total mechanical influence. I don't know what is the result, but there is a mechanical influence. There is a question of Rebecca Donald. Are all individual fibers in the fascia network have a uniform diameter? No, no. Many of them are very different, but it's between 10 and 40 microns. But you can have bigger. When you have bigger, it's not one fiber, it's a group of fibers. And when you have a group of fibers and a very important number of group of fibers, you can have an aponeurosis, you can have a tendon, you can have what we call in anatomy fascia, like a fascia lata, but it's a densification of fibers. Yes, have you more questions? John?
Well, there are a few questions. There was a question about cancer, actually, which I can't find here. Sorry, I can't quite. Oh, yes. Sorry, there's a question about from Andrew about have you noticed any differences in the fascia in or around cancer cells? Is the question.
Well, as a surgeon, it's difficult to observe the cells in a cancer because really it's a mass and it's impossible to put the endoscope inside because it's very often it's bleeding and it's not easy to. But what I can say is that the fibrillar network around a tumor is retracted. There is no mobility. And in a cancerous tumor, this is a constant observation. There is a loss of mobility. This is only my only observation concerning a tumor. There is a loss of mobility compared to a non-tumoral, for example, for a ganglion. A ganglion, you have the natural mobility around the ganglion. When it's a cancer, it's not.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. I think we should probably stop now, unless there are any burning questions. So I'd like to thank you, Dr. Gimberto, very much for giving up your evening to do this. I know this was your first webinar, your first experience of a webinar.
Yes, it's my first. It's not so easy because nobody is in front of you, and so you are talking to the screen, and
I know the feeling.
so you don't know where you are.
Well, I agree with you.
And it's not so easy to begin to speak in English because it's well, the machine
Well, you've
is
done,
gone, and
no, you've done very well. Thank you. And
Thank
Colin's asking if you maybe would do some more. But what I'm going to say is just a lot of the videos we've seen this evening are available with the book. They come on this DVD, which is with the book.
yes,
And you know, I would encourage you to buy this book. It's really absolutely a treasure. Fantastic. And the link to the book is on the left-hand side, where it says web links, Architecture of Human Living Fascia. And if you click on that, that will take you to Handspring Publishing, their homepage, where you can order it from there. Also, just to say, I do apologize for the slight delays this evening. And tomorrow we have Dr. Michael Shea will be giving a talk at 7 p.m. For us, a webinar as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Gimberto. Thank you. And I hope to see you again soon. And
me
thank
too.
you.
Bye bye.
Thank you.